We will start with Dr. Amara Enyia, who is a public policy strategist working across legal or local, national, and international levels in advocacy and organizing. She chairs the International Civil Society Working Group for the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent and is co-executive director of the Movement for Black Lives and Leaves Global Black. She brings to the panel the view from inside the international institutions where this argument must be made operative.
Thank you so much, everyone. I want to extend my gratitude to Your Excellency, President Mahama of Ghana, for remaining a champion in the spirit of Pan-Africanism and building on that lineage, to members of the administration, to members of CARICOM, to other heads of state, allies, and comrades. I'm here as a representative, not just of my organizations, but as a representative of civil society. And so I feel compelled to call us into a particular moment. And that moment actually builds on the words of one of our ancestors, Assata Shakur, who said, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." And I bring those words in the spirit of that ancestor along with many others on the remarks that I want to offer as a response to what we've heard from our excellencies, members of these institutions, and from our scholars of whom I have the privilege of learning so much from. I want to focus my remarks, one, on the importance of making sure that we bring our people along, that this fight will not be won solely in the corridors of government. It will not be won solely in the corridors of institutions. It will not be won in the offices where our people do not have access. And by people, I mean the masses of our people. That as the masses have been responsible for revolutionary change throughout history, that it was our people who rebelled against this institution of slavery, that we must bring our people along, especially in this revolutionary moment. And that is our responsibility. That is something that we must keep at the forefront of our mind in our thinking. I also want to focus my remarks on the specific components that I think I can contribute to in light of everything that we've heard, and that is also the economic component of what this resolution entails, what this resolution means, and the implications of this resolution on existing economic frameworks and economic institutions. The recognition of the transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity in this moment serves as both a rear-view mirror and a windshield. By this, I mean that understanding the impact of the trade, the transatlantic slave trade, as the underpinning to our current economic system is an essential part of understanding the interventions necessary to move us from rhetoric to transformation of systems in ways that impact the material realities of our people, their day-to-day lives. Without that consideration, everything that we are discussing simply becomes rhetoric in the corridors of power. That is to say that this resolution sets forth the fact that the slave trade fundamentally set us on the course of the existing racial capitalist system that relegated Africans to subjugation as commodities and our lands as sites of extraction. We must recognize that simply shifting the exploitation of our bodies by instead laundering that exploitation through international financial architecture did not address the harm nor the crime, but only allowed both to continue, albeit in different form. This dynamic is the basis of the current global economic order. That is to say that our people have evolved in the exploitation wrought by institutions that have been broadly accepted. And they are broadly accepted, though their very basis perpetuates ongoing exploitation via odious debt, for which in some instances, more revenues go to pay down interest on debts than going to ensure that our people have access to basic needs, education, healthcare, infrastructure, and the like. We have a dynamic where multinational corporations in many instances have more power than national governments, and where all too often we do not have sovereign heads of state, we have heads of state with no sovereignty. And as African people, we must lean into sovereignty and self-determination, and especially when it comes to setting forth a trajectory that secures the future, the economic future, and the well-being of our people writ large, not just the elites, but the masses. If this resolution and our subsequent work is to have maximum impact, it must contend with these dynamics. It must not only expose, but reject the premise of an economic framework that requires subjugation and exploitation of Africans and people of African descent, and really of people everywhere. It must directly confront international financial architecture that at its basis perpetuates Africa's place as a site of extraction and undermines our self-determination and our sovereignty. It must remove the invisible barrier between human rights and economic rights. And it must assert that economic rights are indeed human rights. And it must confront and challenge the power dynamics that created international and multinational institutions, formations, and platforms that simply reinforce colonial dynamics. We've used this phrase, reparatory justice, reparations, the root of which is repair. Repair involves restoring damaged or broken items to sound condition, fixing malfunctions, or performing maintenance to ensure proper operation. That's the dictionary definition. As we look at the global economic landscape and the polycrises of climate disaster, economic disaster, and war, yes, indeed, we must have the courage to confront that which is broken. But before a thing was broken, it had to have been built. And before the thing was built, it was first designed. Therefore, what is our mandate when we must address not just the break, but the fundamental design, a condition where we are dealing with a design flaw? Our entire economic system and its institutions and structures are fundamentally flawed because their very design required the exploitation, the trafficking of our people. We are experiencing a design flaw. And because the design is what has perpetuated, it shows up in our current institutions, systems, and the structures that we have today. And it persists, the design persists because the world has not yet confronted it, eradicated it, and built something new. This is to say that we must have the courage to confront systems that are actually operating precisely as they were designed. Because the break is not necessarily in the operation. What is broken is the fundamental design. To be clear, reparations is not just about compensation. It is not just about payment. What is compensation and payment in a flawed economic system anyway? It is not just about apology. It is not just about the return of what was stolen. And it is not just about memory. It is about vision and imagination and a commitment to design and build from a new pattern, rather than following the pattern of the existing institutions and structures. Repair is a commitment to confront and correct, and it requires the vision and imagination of our people in this moment, believing that we have the knowledge, that we have the expertise, that we have the cultural grounding, that in fact we always had it, and what we were prevented from doing was utilizing our imagination, which is our birthright, to create systems, structures, and institutions that actually affirm our humanity. And furthermore, it is not just required for the humanity and dignity of African people, this frame of mind is actually required for the world. The world requires our vision. The world requires us to be architects. After all, any architect will tell you before they hire contractors, bring on engineers, and tap construction workers, they sit at a desk and they draw. They sketch. And there's a philosophy that informs what they sketch. Reparations is a philosophy, actually. Because if we believe that there are those of us who require a fundamentally different world that affirms our lives, our livelihoods, our personhood, that philosophy directly contradicts the existing philosophy that we have today. And if you want to see the fruits of today's philosophy, turn on the news or look on your social media. And so there are just a few closing points that I want to make about what should inform our philosophy, which then informs our design, which then informs what we build, the systems, structures, and institutions. We mentioned Ubuntu at the start of this gathering, our fundamental interconnectedness. Not just platitudes, but we do have a shared stake in our survival. This is necessary. Sovereignty, something that we have been stripped of, the ability to control our own resources, natural, our human capital, and otherwise. The ability to govern ourselves without interference, political, military, or otherwise. The ability to be part of a global community, not put upon by a global community. And finally, as a Pan-Africanist and representative of civil society, I again want to emphasize that nothing happens if we do not bring our people along, that we must remember that our people are not sitting idly by, waiting from instructions from on high. Our people are agitating. Our people are hungry. Our people are clear-eyed. And they also see that the times are changing. Our people are ready for real revolution. This is what our ancestors, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Assata Shakur, Winnie Mandela, even most recently, our dear Reverend Jesse Jackson from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. Gotta call him out. And so many others have fought for. We do not call their names emptily. We call them into this space. We humbly receive the baton. We humbly accept their assistance, and we go forth into our next phase of this work and this journey. Thank you.